All right, we're gonna get started with Kelsey here.
Kelsey, now 2 days removed, how are you feeling, and did doctors give you any indication on how this even happened to you?
I feel fine. As far as like, I don't think I can play in a real game for like another. I mean, realistically, I'll not get so back and just take some rest, but I probably should just take some time to kind of reset because I lost a lot of fluid. I think in that experience alone, I kind of just felt scared because for a while, my legs weren't, so numb and so paralyzed, so to speak, that I couldn't feel my feet. So I just think resetting, getting my bloodstream back flowing, to be able to and I think it just happened over usage, man. I think to answer your question, I think it was just, for one, if I'm honest, I never played that long. I never made it to a postseason. And then I just think, being there and being present for my team, I kind of never thought about anything like Ragdoll. I don't know how random that it even is in a playoff game 5, but that's another conversation for another day. But I felt really grateful that it was, at the time I panicked, but when it was all said and done, I was grateful that it wasn't, I could have been Sid, I could have been Ari, so I was grateful too. But to answer your question, I just think a little time, a little reset button, I think we all could use that, and then just kind of make sure that my body is in the flow state it needs to be to kind of be, competitive and at an elite level.
You need to touch on this a little bit, but your interpretation of the why is that it was so deep into the season. Was it volume of workouts, or exactly do you feel like it might have come
I don't know. I'll blame Steph at practice. But no, I just think that, you're a professional. You do what you have to do. You commit to the work. There's no, complaining about it. I think it's just kind of happened that way. And I think that for me, it was also a learning lesson to figure out where my body needs to be at a playoff level and to maintain what needs to be maintained. And so I thought that was a learning area for myself, and maturing in certain areas as far as knowing what my body needs specifically and what it doesn't.
Alexa, well, so glad to see that you're okay.
Yeah, thank you. Me too.
Based off, your conversations initially with doctors, is there anything moving forward, longer term, that you have to just be careful about, or keep in mind, do to make sure something like that doesn't happen again?
No. I think that obviously, I think that was when I got down with the Vegas doctors and our doctor, that was that's a once in a lifetime thing. Nobody thought Ragdoll game 5 or anything like that. So for me, it was just about going forward, like I said, knowing what my body needs, but I think specifically just making sure that, any athlete, competitively, if you want to be at the top of your game, you kind of got to just keep pouring in. And so I wouldn't have changed anything for me, if I'm honest. I wouldn't have changed anything that I've done, any practice, any workout that I've done prior to, because it was worth it. I guess I played literally till my wheels fell off, like I told you guys. So, like I said, I'm just gonna keep learning the body part of it, but I wouldn't trade it in at all. It was a once in a lifetime experience, and I trade my body in every time.
Sorry, sorry. I'm sure it was, obviously you were dealing with so scary to try and figure out what's going on, and then you can't be there with your team, finish out the game. From that standpoint, how did you kind of process that, and then when you eventually could rejoin the team, what was that moment like too?
Oh, just a lot of crying, a lot of emotions when we got reconnected, all of us. We did all of our pictures, stuff like that. So that was when you got a chance to get back with your group, a group of people that you kind of did, life with for the last 5 or 6 months. It's kind of been, I want to be back with my family, and they made me feel loved, and I hope that, they know that I love them, because, without them, I don't even think I would have got through it, because when I was on the floor, and, I was emotional. I think back to Aaliyah Boston kind of praying over me. I think back to Lexi Hall holding my hand. I think back to Bree Turner kind of just making sure my legs, she was like, Kelsey, they're going to eventually move. She kept telling my legs was going to eventually move. And so that radiation of love was just, it's great to be able to play with the group that I play with. And I can honestly say I'll go to war with them in any kind of day. So it'll be an learning experience for all of us, but I felt grateful that the girls finished the game. Shout out to Odyssey Sims for kind of just being a competitor. Shout out to Lexi can finish the game, Tosh for just finishing and making it feel like we weren't gonna go out without people knowing our name, and I think they did an unbelievable job, and so I'm happy for all of them.
Yeah, a lot of talk around the postseason was kind of just pushing through and kind of pushing through the fatigue.
Yeah.
Were there some symptoms possibly of the rhabdo that you thought were fatigue?
I think back to it, and I can honestly say that, at the time, it was that time of the month as a woman, and so I thought like it was just cramps for a while, and then I felt like my stomach dropped to my legs a little bit, and you guys gotta think I had just hit a 3, and so I didn't even, I'm like, all right, I'm just, and then, obviously you guys saw the video, I just like my body locked, like I just couldn't move, I couldn't and when I fell on Isaac, I felt so bad for him because I was like, maybe he don't even know what's happening, but it was an unbelievable experience. But I think that I think back to it, I think a little fatigue already settled in based on our travel, based on playing game 4, leaving the next day to game 5, and so I took the proper, treatment. I did everything that I would normally do. I just think, life happens.
A couple specific questions. First of all, it looked like you refused the wheelchair.
Heck yeah.
Tell us about that.
No, we're not doing a stretcher, man. On the funny side, I was like, walking out here on a stretcher is just not going to happen. Not doing that. And I was like, if you guys just get me off the floor so they can finish the game, I'll be fine. But I don't know if you guys saw my feet, but they were like dangling because I had no blood flow. And so me getting put off the court was just an act of God, really, because I couldn't lift my legs to move. So the stretcher thing was just, eventually I was like, just get me off the floor. And so I was carried off. I was gonna use a stretcher because I didn't deem it fitting. Like I wasn't about to walk out, like he was gonna see me leave, on my own. And so I think that was just making an impact on myself to say like, no, you're gonna get up and you're gonna figure it out, without the stretcher. So it was just really that.
At what point did you get that feeling back, and when did you know, all right, we'll figure it out, I'll be good?
I think a little bit after my toes started to move, and then once.
Was that in the back?
Yeah, no, that was kind of in the huddle, for a while. Like I said, I was just really numb, and then I started feeling my feet move a little bit, and my toes were wiggling a little bit. I'm like, all right, but I couldn't really lift because the lack of blood flow like I wanted to. So, me being picked up by Papa Todd Chamberlain, he was just keeping me calm for one, but he was just telling me, he was like, your legs want to eventually start moving, you just gotta get the blood flow back. And so I think that reiteration kind of just picked me up a little bit to kind of get through it.
Kelsey, when you think about what you were able to accomplish this season and then all the resiliency you saw from this team, like how is that possible for you personally and then for this team as a group?
Pat, I'll just be honest and I'll say that not a lot of people even expected us to be here. And I think that's within itself a lot to be proud about for our group. We handled a lot of adversity. I think the impact of losing CC was big and paramount for everybody, let alone us. And so that was a shift. People have to adjust. People have to transform their games a little bit to, make sure it was fitting for everybody. But I think the injuries, Pat, and I think that the team camaraderie that we had to keep, bringing people in and bringing people out, that was big for us. And I say this, it's hard to find culture. It's hard to establish that when you try to make a run and when you try to be, a team and you're trying to make, being seeds and you're trying to make the top 8. And so that stuff was big for us, and we could have folded. And we didn't. We didn't tuck our tail. We didn't complain. I kind of made it an effort as a leader in my own way to not bitch, not complain about it. Just, do the work. It wasn't anything that anybody was gonna give us. Being the Fever the last couple of years, there's been more eyes than ever, and so, a lot of people may not like the Fever. So it's just a lot that you just had to be mindful of and be grateful about too, because it could have been worse. And I'm proud of our group, Pat, too, because the adversity that we faced it's not something small, that was big. It was big moments. We lost big pieces, and I think for us, it was just making sure that we kind of picked up where we left off and just kind of staying in tune and staying in it.
Kels, with, as you said, people having to transform their games a bit over the course of the year, given all the adversity. But for you, an MVP finalist season, how did you feel like you grew personally with your game?
I think the part that I grew the most at was, I think the best way to put it was, at this level I used to watch, I was grateful enough to watch Tyrese and Jalen Brunson and those guys in person in the NBA playoffs. And the one thing I took from Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Halliburton was the fact that they took risk. And I don't know how to explain that, but as a guard and as a person that's trying to make plays for everybody else, you gotta allow your game to like let your game be a game and take a risk while doing it. And I think that you guys seeing me take a risk was just me trusting myself, trusting the confidence of my game. And I think that part was big for me because I had played on the 2 for a while, and then when TC went out, I shifted a little bit. And so I think it was big for me not to lose who I was and be able to take a risk and trust who I was and trust the work that I put in. And I say that to say that I wasn't doing that as much as I thought I was. And so when the more and more experience I got throughout the course of games, I'm like, dang, I gotta take more risk. You know, you gotta know that you're doing it for yourself and for your team. It's not about anybody else. And so that was a big leadership shift for me.
Are you able to watch the end of the game at the hospital?
A little bit. I watched it in back because I was on the drip IV with a thing in my nose. So I was watching a little bit, and I was like, you know, smiling when we did great stuff, and then I would shed a tear when we did bad stuff or stuff didn't go our way. And so I was like a wreck, but it was worth it. It was worth it. I'm so proud of our group because I feel like at that time there was so much happening that I don't know if anybody knew what would happen, and I was proud for our group for finishing.
Alexa and Rich. Kelsey, this is a question kind of looking ahead, being a free agent, having an off season ahead of you. There's obviously uncertainty across the board, across the league. Have you put any thought into, you know, what you think you might, you know, wish for, you know, 2026 for yourself, whether you'd like to be back or anything along those lines?
I hope we got a league. So I hope that when it's all said and done, you know, we can, you know, have a season period for all the girls, for every person that's, you know, aspirations to be in the league and be in the W. I think for one, that's the start, you know, being on the same page with that, bless you. Being on the same page for that and kind of just, you know, making sure we have a league to start. No matter what happens, having a league is kind of big for us. And I think individually for me, I'm gonna take my time, figure out what my family needs. You know, losing a parent is a big shift. And so, you know, I take in consideration how my mom feels now. I take in consideration how my siblings and, you know, my intermediate family. My dad's mom is still alive, my grandmother, and so that's big for me. And so, you know, family is big for me. And so I think talking to them and figuring out what's best for us and for what I need internally is always going to be important. And I think that takes time. But I will say to Indiana Fever, like, you know, like 8 years, it's going to be a lot to talk about because I have so much love and so much aspiration for this place. And I think when the time is right, the great conversations will be had. But Indy is like, you know, my second family and everything I've been through the last 8 years. I don't think Indianapolis, Indiana, I don't think there's any other place that was greater for me, the growth and all that. So I think the right conversations will be had. And when it's time, I guess we'll all know.
That's time for one more question about.
And Amber just made it clear to us that you will be the top priority. So this Fever team that started the season was so much different from the Fever team that ended the season. And there's not even room on the roster for all the players who made contributions to this team. So how curious are you about what this Fever team is going to look like next year?
Man, like you said, it's a lot of great questions. Some of it, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't even have control or know anything about, so I'll leave that to Steph, Amber, and all those guys. But to every person that contributed, I would like to think that whatever team that was at the end, whatever team that was in the middle, whatever team was at the beginning, I would like to think that our culture was so big and so great that every person is gonna have somewhere where they can show and be themselves based off what the Fever did this year. And I like to think that we put ourselves in a position to kind of be in conversation for what we all need individually. So to every lady, I think that was a part of our group this year, I think great things will happen for us. I think a lot of it's gonna fall on, you know, the league itself, the expansion. It's a lot of uncontrollable variables that we have to take in consideration here. And so I wanna say that, you know, I think that Fever is gonna do the best for the Fever, and I think that they're gonna put the best pieces in the room for us. So, you know, hats off to the organization for hopefully figuring it out.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Of course.
Have a good one, guys. Have a good off season.